The Rosewood Cafe glowed under the soft September sun, its windows catching the light like honey spilled across Maple Street. Glasses clinked, and the low hum of morning chatter wove through the air, warm and familiar, as the diner's wooden floors bore the scuffs of countless stories. Behind the counter, Marissa Kellen, a 24-year-old with calloused hands and eyes that carried the weight of too many sleepless nights, moved with a quiet grace. Her tray of steaming coffee mugs danced in her grip, a rhythm born from years of balancing exhaustion with determination. Life hadn't been kind to Marissa. Hospital bills for her mother's illness towered on her kitchen table, and her younger brother's dreams of college rested on her modest wages from the cafe. Yet, on this seemingly ordinary morning, something extraordinary was about to unfold, a moment so small yet so seismic it would rewrite Marissa's future and save a billionaire from losing everything he'd built. Picture this, a bustling cafe, the kind where truckers swap road stories, office workers scarf down breakfast, and retirees linger over bottomless cups of coffee. Into this cozy chaos stepped a man in a simple grey suit, his silver-flecked hair and polished shoes betraying a quiet elegance. He settled into a corner booth, a stack of papers spilling across the table, his brow furrowed with the weight of decisions that could shift millions. This was Elliot Vaughn, a billionaire whose name graced the covers of financial magazines, a titan of shipping, construction, and energy. But here, in the unassuming Rosewood Cafe, he was just another customer, until Marissa's sharp eyes caught something no one else did. If you're captivated by stories of ordinary people sparking extraordinary change, stick with me, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Midnight Tales. Our channel is all about unearthing the magic in everyday moments, and this tale is no exception. Let's dive back in. Marissa's morning had started like any other. She'd trudged through the pre-dawn chill, her breath puffing in the crisp air, wrapped in a threadbare sweater that had seen better days. The weight of her world pressed heavy, her mother's illness, her brother's future, the relentless grind of survival. But Marissa wasn't one to crumble. She poured coffee with a smile, her spirit unbroken, her resilience a quiet fire. As she worked the cafe, her gaze kept drifting to the man in the grey suit. Not because she recognized him, few in the diner would, but because his hands trembled faintly as he pored over his papers, not from age, but from the pressure of choices that could make or break empires. Elliot barely noticed her as she set a menu before him, his focus locked on contracts thick with legalese. Marissa poured his coffee, her eyes catching the flicker of stress in his expression. She didn't mean to snoop, prying wasn't her style, but her curiosity tugged as she passed his table again and again. Years of deciphering medical bills, loan agreements, and insurance fine print had honed her knack for spotting discrepancies. And then, there it was, a single line buried in the dense text of Elliot's contract, a clause so subtle it could have slipped past anyone. But not Marissa. To her, it screamed like a siren. Hidden in the jargon was a trap, a liability shift that could cost Elliot not thousands, but hundreds of millions, threatening his empire and the livelihoods of thousands. She froze, her heart pounding. Who was she to meddle in the affairs of a man whose world was galaxies apart from hers? A waitress, barely scraping by, daring to speak up. Doubt gnawed at her, but her conscience roared louder. She couldn't walk away. With a steadying breath, she approached his table, setting down a plate of eggs and toast. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, as she said, "Excuse me, sir, I couldn't help but notice something in your papers. It might be worth a second look." Elliot's head snapped up, surprise flickering across his face. A waitress, commenting on his contracts. But there was no condescension in his eyes, only a spark of curiosity. He slid the document toward her, asking her to show him. Marissa pointed to the line, her finger steady despite the nerves coiling in her chest. Elliot read it, then read it again. The cafe's chatter faded as his silence stretched, and Marissa's stomach twisted. Had she overstepped? But then his eyes widened, realization dawning like a sunrise. She was right. This tiny clause, overlooked by his team of high-paid lawyers and advisors, was a ticking time bomb. If signed, it would have bled his company dry, destabilizing everything he'd built. He set the papers down, staring at Marissa with a mix of awe and gratitude. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice low but earnest. "Marissa," she replied, brushing it off, her cheeks flushing. To her, it was just a moment of honesty. To him, it was a lifeline. Their worlds, hers of struggle, his of power, collided in that instant, bound by a single act of courage. If this story's tugging at your heart, pause for a second and hit that like button, drop a comment, and share it with someone who needs a spark of hope. Subscribe to Midnight Tales for more stories that remind us how one small act can ripple through lives, changing everything. Word of Marissa's keen eye spread quietly, like a secret too good to keep. Elliot, a man who'd built his fortune on calculated risks, was humbled. He'd spent decades surrounded by experts, yet a young woman with no formal training had saved him from ruin. Days later, Marissa dragged herself home after another grueling shift, her hands aching, her mind heavy. On her kitchen table sat an envelope, embossed with a seal she didn't recognize. Her heart skipped as she opened it. Inside was a letter from Elliot's company, offering a scholarship fund in her name for her brother's education. Alongside it, a promise to cover her mother's medical bills in full. And then, a personal note from Elliot himself, thanking her for her courage, her sharpness, her heart. He offered her a role as a junior analyst, believing her gift for seeing what others missed deserved a place in his world. Marissa's eyes blurred with tears as she read, the paper trembling in her hands. For years, she'd felt invisible, her struggles buried under the weight of survival. Now, in one brave moment, she'd not only saved a billionaire's fortune but rewritten her own story. Her mother's treatment began, her brother's future brightened, and Marissa stepped into a role where her mind could shine. But she never forgot the cafe, the long shifts, the people who'd shaped her. She'd return to Rosewood, pouring coffee for strangers with the same warmth, a reminder that humility was her truest wealth. Elliot, too, was transformed. He walked into his gleaming offices with a new lens, sharing Marissa's story with his team, his friends, his world. It became a lesson: wisdom can bloom in the most unexpected places, and greatness often hides in plain sight. Years later, the tale of the waitress who saved a billionaire became a legend, whispered with awe. It wasn't just about money, it was about courage, compassion, and the power of noticing what others overlook. So, what's the takeaway? Sometimes, in the quiet corners of a sunlit cafe, an ordinary person can change everything. If this story moved you, let's keep the spark alive. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to Midnight Tales. Drop a comment below, tell us, I believe small acts can change the world. Let's celebrate the magic of everyday heroes together.